Welcome to the new Employee Environmental and Safety Orientation, prepared by Compliance Center. Here's our agenda. We'll be discussing these topics: OSHA injury, illness, and medical records, bloodborne pathogens, exposure control, and Good Samaritan doctrine, engine hoists, first aid and medical treatment, hazard communication, emergency preparedness and response, lockout, tagout of energy sources, materials handling, storage, use, and disposal, personal protective equipment, forklift operator training, hazardous waste management, respiratory protection, machine guarding, welding, cutting, and brazing, the Clean Air Act, refrigerant recovery and recycling for MVAC. The purpose of this training program is to provide information to new employees to ensure their safety at work. This program will outline the company's policies for environmental protection and worker protection. This program will provide information to the new employee regarding the employer's commitment and the required safe work practices for the employee. Your employer will provide a safe workplace using state-of-the-art equipment, established safe work practices, and personal protective equipment. Every employee is responsible for certain aspects of our environmental safety and health program. Every employee is accountable for completion, conformance, and compliance thereof. It is the responsibility of every employee to work in a safe manner and to follow safe work practices. OSHA injury, illness, and medical records. Injury and illness records will be maintained by the dealership as required by OSHA. If you are exposed to toxic substances or harmful physical agents above the permissible exposure limit for 30 days or more per year, you'll be included in a medical surveillance program. Now, any medical records associated with your job will be preserved for the duration of your employment, plus 30 years beyond the date of such records. Now, these are considered confidential. Employees may request access to these records. Bloodborne pathogens exposure control. The microorganisms in the bloodstream can be transmitted through direct routes of entry, such as a splash into an eye, mouth, or nose opening, contact on skin, enters through cuts, chafing, and scrapes in the skin, or skin injection from a sharp, contaminated object, be it metal, glass, needle, etc. No one within the dealership is required to assist or provide first aid or medical assistance. Therefore, no one is covered under OSHA's bloodborne pathogens exposure control standard. However, as part of the Good Samaritan doctrine, if you are trained on first aid or CPR, you may respond to an injury on a voluntary basis. If so, take care to avoid contact with blood and bodily fluids. Protect yourself with personal protective equipment such as latex gloves, goggles, masks, face shields, breathing barriers for CPR, and aprons. The Good Samaritan doctrine exists for liability for emergency care rendered at the scene of an accident. Any person who in good faith gratuitously renders emergency care at the scene of an accident or emergency to the victim thereof shall not be liable for any civil damages for any personal injury as a result of any act or omission by such person in rendering the emergency care, or as a result of any act or failure to act to provide or arrange for further medical treatment or care for the injured person, except acts of omissions amounting to gross negligence or willful or wanton misconduct. Engine hoists. Now, if you operate an engine hoist, you are required to conduct a daily visual inspection prior to use. You must not exceed the posted weight capacity of the hoist. The lifting arm is moved by a hydraulic cylinder and is adjustable for length. If the arm is lengthened, the lifting capacity of the arm is reduced. Always extend the legs of the engine hoist in relation to the lifting arm to ensure adequate stability. Hoists that are damaged or defective shall not be used. When lifting an engine, make sure to use the designed anchor points. Never leave an unsupported engine hanging on a shop crane. Secure the engine on an engine stand or on the ground before starting to work on it. If using engine stands, make sure that they are designed to support the weight of the object that you are lifting. First aid and medical treatment. The dealership will provide first aid supplies for all employees. First aid kits will be inspected and restocked as necessary. Always report injuries to your supervisor as soon as possible. Eye wash facilities are also available if you are splashed by a corrosive liquid. If this happens, flush the affected area for at least 15 minutes. Now, afterwards, notify your supervisor and seek medical attention. Remove clothing that has encountered the corrosive material. Hazard communication. Now, there are many chemicals that can burn skin, tissue, and eyes, or cause permanent organ damage. Chemicals that are found in batteries, bathroom cleaners, degreasers, lubricants, and paints can be harmful if ingested, inhaled, injected, or absorbed through skin. You should take care to minimize exposure to all hazardous chemicals. Chemicals are labeled according to their hazard class. And you must be able to recognize the pictograms to understand the hazards of each chemical. Here is a pictogram of the hazard classes. You should be familiar with these. The basic parts of a GHS compliant label. You should be aware of these. Safety data sheets, or SDS, are available for all hazardous chemicals. Ask your supervisor if you'd like to review any SDS. Now, there are 16 headings on a safety data sheet that you must understand. And here they are. In the event of an emergency, the emergency coordinator will implement the emergency response plan. Emergency procedures exist for fires, chemical spills, oil spills, and severe weather. Refer to the dealership's emergency contact list and evacuation site plans posted throughout for specific instructions on activation of the alarm system and assembly points. Lockout, tagout of energy sources. LOTO refers to specific procedures to safeguard employees from the unexpected energization of machinery and equipment during service or maintenance activities. Authorized employees must be trained to identify, control, and isolate energy sources. Affected employees must not tamper with locked-out equipment. This is an example of the de-energization procedures that should be followed before servicing an automated lift. Lower hydraulically powered attachments to the ground or support them on metal stands or blocks. Shut off the engine that powers the hydraulic pump. Move the hydraulic lever back and forth a few times to release pressure. Lock out levers and power switches so that the hydraulic system cannot be started while someone is doing repairs. Let the hydraulic system cool down prior to service. You should never perform LOTO procedures unless you have received detailed, hands-on training and your supervisor designates you as an authorized employee. Materials handling, storage, use, and disposal. Storage is not permitted on overhead platforms unless equipped with a guardrail, midrail, and tow board. Overhead storage areas must be marked with the maximum weight capacity in pounds per square inch. Items should not be stored within 18 inches of the ceiling. Razor blades, thumbtacks, and other sharp objects should be carefully boxed rather than loosely thrown into drawers. Flammable and combustible liquids must be stored in approved, identified flammable cabinets. Gasoline must be stored in metal safety cans. Plastic containers are not approved. Remove trash and combustible waste, including liquids, paper, shop rags, or other materials, from the work area daily. Label regulated waste containers, such as hazardous waste, fluorescent bulbs, or used oil, to prevent the mixing of incompatible waste. Do not stack liquid storage drums. Personal protective equipment. When engineering, work practice, and administrative controls do not provide sufficient protection, the dealership provides and requires for the use of personal protective equipment, or PPE. The following PPE is required for all employees working in the service shop, paint shop, and the body shop. That's safety glasses, enclosed-toed, slip-proof sole shoes or boots. The following PPE is required for certain tasks and work areas. Nitrile or PVC-coated work gloves is when handling chemicals, used oil, soaps, and cleaners in the cleanup shop. A face shield when handling corrosives such as batteries, wheel cleaner, and some degreasers. A face shield when using hand or bench grinders. Respirator when spray painting or bondo sanding. Welding goggles when using oxygen and acetylene torch. Welding helmet when using arc or MIG welders. Ask your supervisor about any specialized PPE. forklift operator training. OSHA mandates training and evaluation and certification of all forklift operators. If you're selected to be an operator for the dealership, you will receive detailed training on fundamentals, workplace-specific topics, and truck-specific topics. Training will occur prior to the operation, following an accident or unobserved unsafe behavior, and at least every 3 years. Until you receive training, you're not allowed to operate a forklift at the dealership. Hazardous Waste Management. RCRA stands for the Resource Conservation and Recovery Act. Those who generate hazardous waste are responsible for managing their waste streams from cradle to grave. It means from the point of generation, from a satellite location, to final treatment on site or off site. Aerosol cans are regulated as hazardous waste if they contain any residue or propellant and cannot be thrown away into regular trash unless they're completely empty. Hazardous waste manifests. It must be maintained at the generator's facility for 3 years following the date of the pickup. The generator must obtain a manifest with the transporter's and the treatment facility's signature and date within 30 days of the date of the pickup. Satellite accumulation storage containers, this example is drums that are stored in the paint mixing room next to each paint booth, must be marked with the words hazardous waste, or other words to identify the contents. Generators of small quantities can store hazardous waste on site for up to 6 months or 180 days. Respiratory protection. The 3 classes of respiratory hazards would include Class 1, that's dusts, mists, and aerosols. Class 2, gases and vapors. Class 3, oxygen enriched and oxygen deficient. Now, the 2 main types of respiratory protection would include air supplied and air purifying. Air purifying respirators use filters, cartridges, or a combination of the 2 to remove dusts, mists, gases, and vapors. Air purifying respirators filter ambient air and can never be used in an oxygen deficient or oxygen enriched atmosphere. Respiratory protection. P100 filters. That's used for protection against asbestos fibers. The N95 filter is used for protection against airborne viruses, silica, and nuisance dust. Organic vapor cartridge is used for protection against paint vapors. The typical service life for an organic vapor cartridge that's attached to an air purifying respirator is 8 hours. Respirators must be stored in sealed containers and bags when not being worn. Any worker who wears a respirator must be medically cleared by a licensed healthcare professional. A worker should perform this every time a respirator is worn. Positive and negative seal check. Inspect all parts of the mask, straps, and cartridge and filters. And any worker who wears a tight-fitting respirator must be fit tested when issued the respirator, and at least every 12 months. Machine guarding. The point of operation for machinery must be guarded. This may include blades, cutting stones, pinch points, and rotating shafts. Bench grinders must have a tool rest set at 1/8 inch from the stone base, and a spark guard set at 1/4 inch from the stone top. Brake lays must have guard to prevent contact with the rotating shaft. Fan blades must have metal guards with openings no larger than 1/2 inch. The Clean Air Act. Operations that involve aerosol spray cans or spray guns that are equipped with containers equal to or greater than 3 ounces must be conducted in accordance with the full compliance and requirements of this rule. The new paint rule requires spray booths and stations used to refinish complete motor vehicles to be fully enclosed with 4 walls and a roof and be ventilated. Painters must be certified in accordance with the EPA's paint rule. New painters must be trained and certified by their employer, or a copy of their training record must be obtained before hiring. Refrigerant recovery and recycling, the MVAC. Anyone who repairs or services motor vehicle air conditioning systems, or MVACs, must be properly trained and certified by an accredited institution. Training and certification of any employee who performs MVAC work is required prior to initial assignment. This certification can be obtained through MACS and ASE. Any questions? Please contact your supervisor for further information, and thank you for your participation. There will be additional training modules available in the near future.